President Biden, nearly 10 million illegal immigrants have entered our country. Now, among those 10 million are an unknown number of dangerous individuals. We know that hundreds of individuals appear on the terrorism watch list. We know that a significant number of transnational cartel members are in this population. Other categories include drug smugglers, human traffickers, and many more. There's a laundry list of bad actors who have no business stepping foot in our country. And sadly, it's not a surprise when we allow over 500,000 illegal immigrants with criminal records into the homeland that they commit crimes against American citizens. Even members of law enforcement, the very people entrusted with keeping us safe, are now on the front lines of the border crisis. And no, I'm not talking about police in border states like Texas or Arizona. I'm talking about North Carolina, my state. I'm talking about New York City. 2 years ago in my home state of North Carolina, Wake County Deputy Sheriff Ned Byrd was killed in the line of duty by an illegal alien gang member who crossed the border under President Biden. And just this week in Queens, New York, NYPD officers were shot while trying to apprehend a suspect in a string of robberies. And one was shot in the stomach and the other was shot in the leg. Now, thankfully, they're going to survive. And our prayers are with them and their families, and we're grateful for their service to our country. But the suspect was identified as a 19-year-old from Venezuela who crossed the border illegally through Eagle Pass, Texas in July of last year. Worse yet, he was caught and then he was released with a court date that he predictably ignored. So enough is enough. I'm back here on the Senate floor to once again try and pass a bill called the Police Act. It's a straightforward bill. The Police Act simply states that an alien can be deported for assaulting a police officer, a firefighter, or another first responder. And this bill has already passed the House, and it can be sent to the President's desk by passing it right here today. Pretty simple. But now, the last time I tried to pass this bill, a senator from Connecticut, he blocked it and he called it nothing. That's 100% wrong. Specifically, the Police Act, it amends the Immigration and Nationality Act to explicitly state that an illegal immigrant may be deported for assaulting a police officer. Now, it's important to point out that the current law does not cover all assaults against law enforcement. That means that some immigrants can remain in the country even after committing assaults against cops. And we know that under the Biden administration, that is a very real possibility, unfortunately. But the truth is that we cannot trust this administration to do the right thing or enforce the law and to keep our communities safe. That's why we need to pass the Police Act today. Any senator who claims to back the blue should have no problem at all supporting this bill. So I sincerely hope that in the face of yet another attack on police officers, that we could pass this bill today. And as in legislative session, and notwithstanding Rule 22, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on Judiciary be discharged from further consideration of H.R. 2494 and the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration. Further, that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there objection?
Mr. President.
Senator from Connecticut.
Mr. President, reserving the right to object, the Border Patrol Union are law enforcement officers who patrol the northern border, who serve this country, who protect this country, endorsed the bipartisan border security bill that my friend from North Carolina opposed, as did almost all of his colleagues. The Border Patrol Union, the organization that represents law enforcement officers, supported that bill for a number of reasons. It would have surged resources to the southern border to make sure that we properly administered our border and made sure that only people are coming to this country who have legitimate asylum claims. It would have invested in technology to make those Border Patrol officers' job easier. It would have granted new hiring authorities to make sure that we can get people down to the border faster rather than just redeploying agents from the northern border to the southern border. But it's likely that they supported that bill for an additional reason. Under current law, if you are coming to this country to apply for asylum, if you have a criminal history in the United States during a prior visit or in your home country, that question is not relevant under existing law until you go before an asylum judge, before you go before an immigration judge to make your asylum claim. Senator Lankford, myself, Senator Sinema, we thought that didn't make sense. We thought that that question of your prior criminal history should be relevant the minute that you show up at the border. Right? That you don't get into the United States to make your claim of asylum if you have a criminal history. That was part of the bipartisan border bill. That would have protected the country. That would have protected our law enforcement officers. But my Republican colleagues turned down the opportunity to pass bipartisan legislation that would prevent individuals with criminal records from coming into the country and applying for asylum. Because under current law that the president is bound to administer and enforce, those questions are not brought into the process until that asylum claim is being heard by a judge. And so it's just another example of the ways in which the bipartisan border bill, the bill that Republicans asked for, demanded Democrats negotiate, would have made this country safer, would have created a more efficient and more secure border. And I am still furious and heartbroken that Republicans decided to keep the border a mess because it helps their presidential candidate politically instead of trying to solve a problem. As for this specific measure, as I said last time I came to the floor to object, it is already, under current law, a deportable offense if you commit a crime of violence. It is already, under current law, a deportable offense if you commit and are convicted of any crime involving moral turpitude. And further, non-citizens who are convicted of any aggravated felony, including misdemeanor offenses, are deportable as well. So this bill is seeking to solve a problem that doesn't exist because current law says if you commit an assault on a law enforcement officer, you are going to be deported. And so why are we debating this bill if current law already says you can be deported for assaulting a police officer? Well, I don't know the answer, but what I know is that there is a broader effort underfoot by former President Trump and my Republican colleagues to try to make Americans believe that there is a specific, unique threat posed to you by immigrants, that you should fear people that are coming to this country to seek a better life or to flee terror or torture. It's a familiar trope because it was used against my forefathers when they came here from Ireland. It was used against those who came to the United States in prior generations. You should fear the Irish. You should fear the Italians. You should fear the Chinese. Today, you should fear those who are coming from Central and South America. But it's just not the truth. I know it is hard to hear for some folks that believe everything they watch on Fox News, but individuals who are first-generation immigrants to this country are less likely to be convicted of violent crimes than individuals who are born in this country. In 2020, the Trump DOJ sought to prove that false. They actually commissioned research to examine the rate of crime between non-citizens and citizens because they couldn't believe the data, because Fox News says that we should fear immigrants. Here's one of the papers that was commissioned by the Trump DOJ. We find that undocumented immigrants have substantially lower crime rates than native-born citizens across a range of felony offenses: Relative to undocumented immigrants, U.S.-born citizens are over 2 times more likely to be arrested for violent crimes, 2.5 times more likely to be arrested for drug crimes, and over 4 times more likely to be arrested for property crimes. These are quotes directly from a Trump-funded Department of Justice report. I don't disagree with my colleague from North Carolina. Of course, if someone commits an assault against a law enforcement officer, they should be deported from this country. If somebody commits an assault against a community member, regardless of their occupation, they should be deported from this country. That's what the existing law says. If you are convicted of a felony or a misdemeanor assault, any crime of moral turpitude, you are deportable. And so to me, this is duplicative at best, and at worst, an effort to just try to reinforce this very dangerous mythology that this country has something to fear from immigrants who are coming to this country to flee economic desperation and violence and terror and torture. And for that reason, I would object.
Objection is heard. Senator from North Carolina.
I appreciate my colleagues' comments. I believe them to be sincere. But let's not get lost in the swirl of eloquence here. I believe my colleague, he once said that illegal immigrants are undocumented Americans, direct quote, and that they are the people we care about the most, another direct quote. But I would submit that if you illegally enter the United States and then beat up a police officer, you are most certainly not an American. And the only thing that we should care about is that you're deported. Now, he said these laws can lead to deportation, but it's not necessary that they do, particularly under this administration. I'll refer to my prior remarks. There's been 500,000 of the illegal immigrants, 500,000, with criminal records that have come into the homeland, again, illegally. And it's no surprise that they commit crimes against Americans. So this bill, which he seems to support, I'm a little confused at his language. It seems like he might support this unanimous consent effort here because it's important because the current law does not cover all assaults against law enforcement. Deporting an illegal alien who assaults a law enforcement officer likely requires a complex legal analysis to prove that the illegal alien committed an aggravated felony or crime involving moral turpitude. It's not guaranteed that this process will even lead to deportation. So, the Police Act creates a simple, straightforward, common sense rule that says illegal aliens who assault cops are deportable, period, end of story. We saw it in North Carolina. We've recently seen it in New York City. And it could happen in a community near you. I yield the floor.